Do you start? Yeah. So it is just this click.
No, we are ready.
We are ready.
You just need to just fluff it a little bit up.
Two clicks.
Yeah.
That's it. Are we ready? How do you know it's starting?
We are ready.
We are ready?
For the confirmation.
Okay. So do I start?
Yes, we can start.
Okay. Hello students, this is Professor Dinesh Gosai speaking on HRM or Human Resource Management. Now in today's context or in this high changing environment, you would see this function of human resource management being evolved in a very dynamic way. And when we say dynamic, it means that you see the changes in the organizational culture happening. You see the competitive atmosphere. You see everywhere, wherever cutthroat competition. And given this scenario, it becomes very important that the utmost central domain of the organization, that's about HRM.
There's a problem in the relay. We are working it out. It will take 2 to 3 movements.
Okay.
If there's a problem in the relay is not going on.
Okay. So
It's a total, blackout which I'm seeing.
Okay. So do tell me when to start.
Done.
Done? Okay. Good afternoon, students. This is Professor Dinesh Gosai here. Would be discussing in the coming 2 hours on HRM, that is Human Resource Management. When we say Human Resource Management, this has become in a lot more dominant domain in the last 50 years. And if you see in the last 20 years, the importance has become substantial. And when I say substantial, it means that from today's context, lots of things have been changing. You see the market environment, you see change as such, you see technological changes, you see innovation in terms of communication, you see changes in terms of people aspirations. There have been leaps and bounds in terms of customer service. There have been a great wave of change. They say that if you take the change as such, say from 1000 AD, for example, in 1000 AD they say that the change used to happen, say, once in 100 years or so. Any one change, and it should remain for some time. After 1800 AD, the change used to happen every 50 years. They say that, and when it came to 19th century, 19th or 20th century, they say from 1900 to 1950, in the 50 years, the change that happened was equivalent to the last 800 years. And that's a big change. And when we say change, it was change of technology, it was change of people aspiration, it was change about people commuting to different places, it was change about lots of things. And coming into the 21st century, they're saying that change is happening every 10 years. Every 10 years is very fast. So when environment is taking so much of change, say for example every 10 years, that means for any organization to sustain, last, excel in their current domain has become a real cutthroat competition. Being as a student, being as if you're an employee working for any organization, you must be feeling this, because every 10 years change, every person working in that environment also gets to know the change. And if this is the environment that we are living in, that means as an organization, they need to be adapt, they need to be flexible, they need to look into how to live with that change. Because if the environment is changing and the organization is not keeping pace with that change, then chances of that the organization will lost its way is quite dominant. Given this scenario, now it's important to understand that the domain or a function of the organization that drives its change in terms of flexibility, in terms of adaptation, in terms of maneuvering, in terms of acquiring, in terms of letting go of the past technologies. One domain that really takes charge or takes guard of the situation, not only in terms of conceptualization, adaptability, but also seeing to it that the change is implemented as well, is the domain of HR, or human resource management. So looking from this perspective, students, let me assure you that what we are going to discuss in the coming 2 hours is going to be very relevant from the context, not only from a learning perspective, but also in terms of how to adapt to the changes as well. Now, when we speak of HRM, ticking ahead of discussion, HRM includes, as you can see in the slide, key functions that it handles with. And these are the tools, as we call it, the tools that the HRM as a domain uses to navigate, to maneuver, to decide, maybe decide a policy function, maybe to implement it, maybe to delegate it. So let's understand these tools one by one. And the tools are: 1, selection. So I've made a good mind map or a tree to represent it, so it becomes very clear as we learn HRM. So if you look into this slide properly, you see selection is one of the key functions. Recruitment, employee legislation, discipline, development, training and reward programs. You see productivity, you see motivation, you see trade unions. So these are the tools, the functions that the HRM deals with it one by one and makes changes according to whatever is required in the context. Now we'll look into this one by one to understand this better. Okay, 1, recruitment. A very key portfolio from an HRM perspective. When we say recruitment, now a lot of people here confuse with recruitment and selection. Selection is slightly different from recruitment. When we say recruitment, it has to deal with one, advertising what the job is all about. It's about attracting prospective employees to the domain and getting up till the interviewing process. Till that step, it is recruitment. It's very clear to understand that. From there on start the selection and interviewing process. That's very different. But when we say recruitment per se, it means that one, marketing the job. It could be through job fairs, it could be through advertisements, it could be through job portals, be it Naukri, Monster, etc. So it's about attracting jobs and getting the prospective employees till the point of selection is recruitment. So when we say recruitment, we'll go one by one how the steps involved are. Number one, advertisement. Now advertisement could be through print media, it could be through online portals, it could be through job fairs, because that is one of the most commonly tools used these days. When you say job fairs, where the many employers come under one roof and market their jobs. This is what they do in advertising. It could be through print as well, through job classifieds, it could be through online portals as well. Wherein they also in recruitment get to decide the job description. Now this is very important from any organization. Now if you see any job description, say for example a design engineer for that matter. Now a design engineer is the job title. Now when we say design engineer, the job description could be different for different companies based on what the company type is, what are his job requirements, what are his job specifications as well. So one, the job description is specified. And if you have seen through any job portal, it is when an advertisement is laid, it's very clear. One, a job description is laid out very clearly, and once that is done, there's also an eligibility criteria if you will normally see, and that eligibility criteria is the eligibility of the person. That means what is expected of the person. Now when we say expected of the person, it could be educational qualification, it could be responsibilities undertaken, it could be set of experience, it could be domain experience, it could be team management, it could be skills like technical skills, communication skills, team building skills. So all these job specifications also need to be laid out. Very important, because whenever an HR domain advertise a prospective position, whatever the title is, a job description is important. And the next obvious question that comes up is, how do you know what is the job description? Now when we say how do we know, that comes through job analysis. Now job analysis is also a key function of the HR domain. Now a job analysis is done based on that particular nature of the job title. Based on the job analysis, the job description is laid out and the person's specification as well. Then in recruitment, it's the process by which a job vacancy is identified and potential employees are notified. Notified means reached out. The nature of the recruitment process is regulated and subject to employment laws. Any organization that you work for, there are employment laws. And when we say employment laws, it includes ESIS Act, it includes the leave specification, it includes the working hours, it includes the pay packages, the structure. All these includes an employment law. So these also being part of it. The main forms of recruitment through advertisement, be it newspaper, magazines, trade papers, and internal vacancy list. When we say internal vacancy list, are the internal job postings or IJPs. If a few of your students, if you are working for any organization, can relate to what I am saying, IJP, what IJP means, internal job postings, where the company itself to its internal employees posts the job for the next level. It could be through the same hierarchy, or it could be through cross-functional exposure as well. Plus, when we say job description, is the outline of the role of the job holder. What is the job specification? What is it that a person needs to do about it? The person's specification, outline of skills and qualities required of the post holder. Now, it could be educational qualification, it could be expertise in terms of specific domain skills are also mentioned out here. Applicants may demonstrate their suitability through application form, a letter, or CV or curriculum vitae. Now, if a person gets to know this notification either through a print media or an online media, then at this point of time, the student or the prospective employee can post their resume through post, through email, or whatever medium that the company is accessible at. Now, once we are done with recruitment, now we need to understand that recruitment is a challenge in the current context, because you look at any organization, one of the key challenges that any organization is facing these days is attrition, because roughly the Indian average for across industries, the Indian average for all organizations put together is 20%. And when we say 20%, that's substantially high. It ranges as high as 50%. If you see domains of IT sector, if you see domains of BPOs, that is touching 50%. So if 20% is the attrition rate, national average, that means it's phenomenally high. And even if you see world over as well, it ranges around 12 to 15%. That's pretty high. And when we say attrition, it's quite a challenge, because during attrition, it is not about the person leaving the job standalone. There's a lot of cost involved, because when a person is leaving a job profile, that means he's taking away alongside with him his experience, his knowledge about the organization, about the job description, about the job domain. He's taking it to where then? He's taking it to competitors as well, any domain you work for. So the point is, if attrition is a big time challenge, then recruitment needs to be sharpened up. Now, if you see Stephen Covey's model of sharpening the saw, one of the essential habits that he mentions of, when we say sharpening of the saw, for an HR person, this is definitely the sharpening tool. That means the HR person needs to have a clearly laid out plan for recruitment. It should not happen that people are taking measures of recruitment as the need arises. Then it's too late, because if you don't have a backup mechanism, and that's the reason why every organization, or lots of organizations, if I am to put in that words, that a lot of organizations have a laid out plan. Means that people plan their recruitment process in advance throughout the year. They have a separate budgeting for it. HR person move to different locations, maybe to institutions as well, wherein they market their job in job fairs, could be market their job in colleges, in recognized institutes, or in newspapers. So they have a good pipeline, we call as bench strength. Now, when we say bench strength, is the backup strength, that if at all this is what the employees are, this many employees are living, we have a backup for that. And it's a journey, it's a process that the HR person or domain needs to carry out throughout the life cycle of the organization. And that also depends on the month that you're operating on. Every organization have their peak months. based on the business domain that they are working in. Based on that, the HR team can align up their recruitment process. And also it is commonly seen that attrition happens also at certain point of month. For example, normally across industry, the maximum attrition happens in April, May, June, because that is where appraisals happen, and if a performance bonus is declared, once people normally tend to leave there. So if April, May, June are the normal peaking months of attrition, then the HR team needs to be aligned up for this kind of flow wherein the organization kind of aligns up to it. Okay, so once the recruitment process is in line, and that's only the half step involved of the entire domain of recruitment and selection, once this is done, we move on to the next half, a very critical half, selection. Now let me tell you, students, as an HR person, it's not about filling vacancies. It's not about just filling your bus and seeing that every seat is occupied. It's not about that. In this age of cutthroat competition, it has to be very clear that the person on board is the right person, number one. Number two is he in the right position where he's sitting? When I say sitting in the bus, means is he doing the right job based on his competencies and alignment? A lot of times you will find that people have different skill sets which they are good at. Number one, people have different inclinations as far as domains are concerned, but they do certain other job functions. They might be good as an individual in certain competencies, but that's not the domain that they are working on. That means it's not only important that people are on board at the right time and at the right places, but also the right fit is important as well. So that's where selection comes in. Recruitment was always about attracting people to the company premise, but thereon it's a job of a selection team. Now when we say selection team, the HR actually maneuvers the process. One, definitely he manages the entire show of selection, number one. But based on the job description, suppose the position is from operation team or from maintenance team, for example. Suppose is a service engineer, or suppose he is a district manager or an assistant manager of operational team. In that case, in the selection process, what the HR person does, he calls up the line managers or maybe a supervisor or maybe assistant manager in the selection process as well, because he checks on the basic competencies of skill sets, and the HR person scales into areas of approach, areas of how long the person will stay in the organization or not. He kind of manages the salary compensation packages as well. So this is what in the selection process happens. So when we go into selection, the first step is shortlisting. We shortlist the person. Say for example, there is a job posting of around job vacancy of around 20 odd jobs, say for example across India at one point of time, and the resumes or CVs that the organization receives for a 20 job posting is around, on average they receive 2,000 to 3,000 job postings generally. And if that is the size, then definitely shortlisting happens. The shortlisting has different levels. One, at the level of resume itself, where the HR person kind of very much shortlist from 2,000-3,000 resumes in the example that we have mentioned. They chop it down to say around 400, 500, 600. Now, this chopping down or cut sizing or shortlisting could be done on various parameters or benchmarks, as we call it. Could be 1, qualification, 2, experience, 3, the kind of company they have worked with, 4, the salary structure, 5th, the team handling if the job structure demands. So based on benchmarks, based on the job description, shortlisting happens. Once the shortlisting has done, say for example, for a 20-30 job posting, the HR person has shortlisted to around 400, 500 people. Then interview happens. Now there's an entire process involved. It could be interviews, it could be presentation, interview exercise. So when we say inter exercises are exercises of inbox, outbox. Say for example, how do you prioritize work? Say if you're working as a manager, assistant manager, and if you have 10 jobs to do or 10 things to do, how do you prioritize your work in 1 to 10 order in terms of importance? So it could be writing an email to a superior, it could be addressing a team meeting, it could be meeting a very important client, it could be looking into logistics of the goods that are to be received at the customer end. Suppose if these are the 4-5 things that the person needs to do at one point of time, how is the person going to prioritize it? Because prioritization is important. You should know first things first. So a lot of time, if there are 10 things to be done, a lot of time people have no clue about where to start from, and they normally start with what is urgent. Now that might not be the correct scenario, and when I say urgent, this is different from being important. Now when we say being important, and it could be a combination of urgency and importance as well. So what's urgent and important? Number one. Then what is important might not be urgent at this point of time. So the inter-exercise are basically to see skills of how do you prioritize work. It could be psychometric testing. So when we say psychometric testing, it's about various tools that we in HR domain use. This could be for self-esteem scores. It could be on self-confidence scores. It could be on decision making. It could be about emotional intelligence. So all psychometric tools which are based on the requirement of the job domain are been put in. Then attitude testing. Attitude testing could be in terms of logical reasoning. It could be mental arithmetic. It could be reasoning abilities. So a right form of exercise, it could be a mathematical equation. It could be a story. It could be logic. It could be language logic. So these are the few skills that are tested that a person goes through in the process of selection. Now, students, let me tell you very honestly, the company that puts in a lot of effort, focus on selection really wins the day. Now, when I say wins the day, means that this is a gateway or doorway where you are seeing that the right person is right up there at the right time at the right place. Important? Very much important in today's context, because there's so much of dynamism happening around inside the organization and outside the organization. Very key portfolio. Okay, so selection process of assessing candidates and appointing a post holder. Applicants are shortlisted. More suitable candidates are selected based on the tools that we have discussed. And the selection process varies according to the organization needs. For example, for certain time, a technical skill is most important. The communication skill, they might not be required based on the job domain, because, say for example, a person is from an R&D team. Now for an R&D team, skills that are required are, number one is he has to be good in his domain specificity. Number one. Two, he might not be a team player, and that's okay from an R&D perspective. He might be a solo player, and it's good. Yeah, in certain contexts, team perspective is also important, but from an R&D position, skills that we look forward to are good domain knowledge about whichever field he wants to research on. Two, he must have a good experience in that subject knowledge. Three, he should be a very good solo player, and a team player both, but more focused on solo, because that's about more of solo involvement first and then team as well, because any organization is about teams as well. So when we say teamwork, let me tell you that a lot of time we kind of say he should be a team player, should be teamwork. Yes, it's important. But understand, students, playing solo is also equally important. So in an organization, when you're doing a job at a workplace on your workstation, you're doing solo actually. And yet you are part of a team, of a local team, of a larger team as well. So it's both involved. So never undermine this fact that doing your job solo is also important, whichever domain specification you go for. Great. So that's so first we have addressed recruitment, two, selection. Next one. Before we move on to the next one, we also get to know the interview. Interview in terms of selection also is the most common method. Now, when we say interviewing, it means that a lot of time people conduct various kind of interviews. It could be telephonic interviews, it could be one-to-one interviews. But it's important that any organization, one-to-one interviews are all really measured and counted for, because there you see the individual in one at a glance. That's important. Psychometric testing, assessing the personality of applicants, will they fit in? It could be about attrition. So various psychometric tools are available. It could be disc profiling, it could be meta programs, it could be specific skill oriented that we discussed, like on self-esteeming. It could be as a team player, it could be about self-confidence, skills like that. Aptitude testing, entry exercises. Entry exercises also includes things like writing emails or writing an essay. Now, writing emails is important because we are living in a global world wherein we are connected across the global. That's just a touch of button. You are there across. So if that is the case, and if you have international clients across, which in majority of cases you'll find so, that means how you communicate with your internal and external clients is important. So emails, etiquette, it's about not only about verbal communication but also about non-verbal communication as well. Presentation. Now when we say presentation, is looking about for different skills which is ideal for the candidate. Now presentation could be a verbal presentation, it could be a physical presentation with job demand. For example, if the nature of the job is say a marketing or a sales profile, then presentation becomes important, because you need to be presentable, because that is the first selling point for the individual if the domain is sales. So in that case, presentation becomes one of the top features for selection as well. So one, we are done with recruitment. Two, selection. We move on. Now once the person is rolled in, now when we say rolled in, that he is now an employee of the organization, then we move on to what are things that are there as he works in an organization. That means it's about legislation. Now when we discuss, if you recollect, employment laws, so what are certain legislative things that are there so that the person takes care of this? So when we talk of employment legislation, we'll speak on equal opportunities, discrimination, or union recognition, contracts, health and safety, and EU directives. So we'll go one by one. Employment legislation. Now, employment legislation actually in a generic term, if I'm to call it, is how do you manage your employees as they are there in the workstation, or even when they are not there in the workstation. So it requires wide areas of attention, and it also adds to the cost of business as well. Even a small business like a parlor, the legislation relating to the employees is important, like chemicals used in hairdressing, saloon for example, and to be carefully stored and handled to protect the employees. If suppose they are working in a pharmaceutical company where safety measures need to be taken care of. If the employee is working for a mining company for that matter, so in that case all the safety guards need to be in place. not only need to be in place, but see to it that they are most appropriate, they are in line with the current terms of the safety norms. So employment legislation becomes part of of the thing that we are looking taking care of. Discrimination. Once the person is working for the organization, when we say of equal opportunities, it should be anyone working within the organization should not discriminate on things like race, gender, or disability. It could be on various grounds about a son of the soil approach. It could be about statehood. It could be about regional factionism. So these things, it's the HR person's responsibility that this discrimination doesn't happen. And let me tell you, students, that a lot of time when people are inducted or enrolled in the organization, it becomes a prerogative of the HR person or the domain specification that they set a clear code of conduct. Now, code of conduct is being laid out by different organizations. Now, when we say code of conduct, it means that people have laid out procedures. They are in line with employment laws, number one. Two, code of conduct helps the organization to set a culture in place. Now, when we say of any organizational culture or climate, it is done through these channels of code of conduct, rules and regulations as well. So discrimination is one thing that the domain, HR domain takes care that doesn't happen. So after employment legislation, once the rules are laid out as well, now when we say of legislation, the next thing comes also is of discipline. Now, if any employee is working for an organization, that means he has to adhere to certain guidelines, certain rules, certain specifications that the job demands. Now, this could be also part of laying a culture in place. It could also mean that they are forming uniformity. It also means that they want systems to be in place as well, because they say, when we say of discipline, it's one of our very thrust area for any organization, because a disciplined team often give wonderful results. You work for any domain that you work for, if your system is aligned, fine-tuned, well-oiled, taken care of, then discipline, regular discipline really put forth your organization on a global map as such. So when we say of discipline, things that need to be taken care of are: firms just cannot sack workers. Now, there was a time around 1800, 1900, where people were laid off just like that, without giving notice period, without really specifying the cause about it. So firms cannot just lay off people. There are a wide range of procedures and steps in dealing with workplace conflict. Now, these are mentioned in the slide, as you can see this. It could be through informal meetings, as you can see, where people, if you want to discuss certain conflict, because in cutthroat competition, you will always find that there is a conflict. And tell me, students, is conflict good or bad? Interesting, isn't it? Now, when we say conflict, it's not about a fight. Conflict happens when there are two different opinions. And let me tell you that if you have 2-3 different opinions, it's good for the organization, because it gives diversity, it gives difference, it gives a lot of variety. And let me tell you, choices are better than no choices, yes or no? So if you have more options, better. Yeah, that doesn't mean conflict has to aggravate into a fight. Conflict means there are differences of opinion. So when we say difference of opinion, it could be resolved through various measures. It could be through informal meetings. If it is not getting resolved by informal meeting, it could be through formal meetings. It could be through verbal warnings as well. It could be written warnings. Written warnings could be through emails. It could be a draft presentation as well. It could be through going through a standard grievance procedure. So where we put in grievance, there is a structured order about how to resolve a matter. Say for example, if an employee has a grievance, maybe with his peer group, maybe with his subordinate, or maybe with a superior, where there's a difference of opinion, maybe because of different value system, maybe because of different way they perceive things, maybe because of different belief systems. Now, this could be laid out through a standard grievance procedure as well. Or working with external agency. If suppose the conflict is not resolved internally, then externally also it could be resolved, taking guidance maybe through a standard legal expertise. It could be through a judge or so, or an advocate for that matter, or to an external third-party negotiator, which are available these days, who specialize in negotiating conflicts. So it could be various of these disciplines. So we have seen so far in the process of one is the domains of HRM that we're discussing. One, we have seen recruitment, selection, employee legislation, discipline, and now development. We'll speak on development. So we all have seen that since market is changing phenomenally, dynamically, in a very high end of spectrum, that means development is important to individuals, because for an HR person, when they are recruiting somebody, anybody, they are looking for a long-term relationship. It's important. Why? One, they don't want people to leave them. Reason, we have discussed that they don't want knowledge to go off. They don't want experience to go off. They don't want expertise to go off and go off to competitors for sure. Not go off to them. So, given that, if this is happening, that means you are also having a bunch of people who are staying for the organization for some time. And any organization will find quite a few of that. And if that is the case, you will find that if people are there for organization 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years for that matter as well. If that is the case, that means since the market is changing, they need to change as well. So skills that they say, at this point of time, I would like to give a proverb. It says that what got you here won't get you there. I repeat, what got you here won't get you there. That means whatever skill set, experience, knowledge you had maybe 5 years back, 10 years back, which might be the most relevant at that particular point of time for that particular job function, you might have excelled because of this, and that's why you have reached, might be as an assistant manager or manager position, or maybe heading one of these BUs, but the same skill sets would not be necessarily relevant in today's context and time and position, because the market is changing everywhere, and that's the reason they say change is the only constant. So if this is the case, development becomes very important. We need to equip people with new skills, with new set of with new knowledge, with knowledge about what's happening in the industry, knowledge about technology, knowledge about handling people well. Because let me tell you that it's not only the environment per se is changing, the external environment, people are changing as well. Today, the world that we are living in is of instant gratification. People want results fast. And if you're not going to deliver fast, say for example, you work for any industry, customers' demands have gone up. You see, their expectations in terms of credit limits have gone up. Their expectations in terms of product changes have gone up. Their expectations in terms of benefits have gone up. If given this scenario, then as an organization as well, the organization needs to align up to this as well. So that means development needs to take care in terms of opportunities, promotions, personal development, or CPDs, or continuous professional development, or leadership development, or management development, whatever you call it. But development is, they say that learning is a continuous journey. So development need to be taken care of, and we'll look into one by one. So when we say developing the employees can be regarded as investing in the valuable asset. It has been observed specifically, for example, as you're listening to this lecture, I'm sure a lot of people are 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 doing this MBA program maybe after joining an organization. That means for you, you have felt that in today's world, doing an MBA is important because that's what the world demands at this point of time. And you might, the last learning that you might had might be 1 year back, might be 2 years back, might be 5 years back as well. So you yourself got to know that, oh, the world is changing. I also need to adapt to it, and you are learning this through an online medium. The education has changed, isn't it? This is one of the few changes where earlier, say 10, 20 years back itself, people can't thought beyond classroom training. But today you can see we are kind of imparting learning from different perspectives. Now I am based in some other location, you are based in some very different locations, yet learning is happening effectively. So when we talk of development, it's important to understand that a person needs to invest, the company needs to invest its resources of learning on one of the biggest assets for the organization. And one of the biggest assets for any organization are humans. Infrastructure is a propelling agent, but one who drives this propellant or who drives this change are people in any organization. And if those are the people who are driving business in this complex and highly competitive world, that means they need to be equipped well. That means they need to be really made sound in terms of that technical knowledge. So also given said that they are the source of motivation, a source of helping the employees fulfill potential. A lot of time when an employee is working for maybe the first year, second year, he is kind of highly motivated. He has got lots of plan and aspiration. But as he or she moves up, maybe 4, 5 years, 10 years for any organization, need not necessarily the drive is same. So it is up to the HRM to identify this about who are the people they are going to shortlist for development, who needs training, who needs skill development, who needs knowledge sharing as well. So based on this, they handpick individuals from different domains so that they then go on to impart knowledge for them in terms of training and expertise. So let's talk of training as well. Now, when we say training, training involves things like new skills, new systems, which improves efficiency. So it is similar to development. When we say training, it keeps the employees up to date with the change of field. It aims to improve efficiency. Now, training could be an in-house matter wherein people have a T&D team or L&D team, they call learning and development team or training and development team, which is a sub-tool or sub-function of HRM. Now, if the organization is very big, anything around $1 billion plus organization, they definitely all have a T&D or L&D team, which is a sub-function of HRM. Now, these team identifies areas of development. It could be through TNAs. TNAs are training need analysis based on job location or job description, changing work environment, competitor knowledge. Based on this, through a TNA mechanism, they identify the need of the training based on location, type as well, and give the training program. Reward system. So let me recapitulate where we are coming from. We have saw recruitment, selection, employment legislation, discipline, development, training, and now reward system. They say that if a person needs to be suitably motivated, external rewards are equally important. Self-motivation is the driver motivation that a person goes through, yes, but he also needs to be backed up by external motivations as well. Now, external motivation could be pay, it could be benefits, it could be perks, it could be incentives, it could be performance bonus, it could be add-ons like coupons, vouchers, so on and so forth, lots of them. So a reward system of pay and benefits used by the firm to reward workers. Now, in today's context, lots of pay perks are given which are different. For example, people give coupons for maybe for a big bazaar outlet, maybe for a pantaloon shopping. So they become more different. Now, this 10 years back or 20 years back, the organization couldn't even think of this. But if the organization want to retain people, the best people, they will go all out and reach out to people and give some niche benefits. It could be a Sodexo coupons, it could be coupons for films, it could be coupons for maybe a baby care sector. Lots of people do it internationally. So it could be any of them. And money not is the only method. It may not be purely money based as well. It could be about weekly off. It could be about picnics or team picnics, which helps the people have a good bonding, have a good rapport, so that the team spirit evolves as well. It could be about fringe benefits that we have discussed in terms of coupons. It could be flexibility at work. When we say flexibility of work, for example, if you're working in a big town or metro, even for a tier 2 city for that matter, one of the big challenges is commutation, and especially if you are coming from any suburb of any big time city to the main center, the commercial center of the city. Normally the peak hours are around 8 to 10 in terms of commutation, and people these days commute a lot. It could be 1 hour, 2 hours sometimes. Now, when we say flexi hours, that means people change their work timing, and a lot of organizations do it as well to give the benefits to the employee. That means they start their working hours either maybe at 7, so that either one at 7 a.m. or it could be at 11 or 12 in the noon. What happens is they are offsetting the commuting pattern of their employees. So when they are saying offsetting it, it means that for a normal metro person, when he earlier used to commute for hour and a half, the travel time is reduced to maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and that's substantial, and that's per side. And that's per side, that means he saves on good 1.5 hours every day. That means he can give the time to himself, to his family. So that's a value add. This is called as value added services. And certain times, there is no tangible element of money, but it is priceless. And people appreciate that as well. So it could be flexibility to work, or it could be also in terms of working from home. Now, a lot of job functions, suppose if it's a consulting job, it's a service-oriented job, or it could be jobs which might not require a job floor location or a workstation, to call it so. If that is the case, then the person can actually, not organization, give this leverage of working from home. It could be calling up clients. It could be about mailing to customers. It could be about data entry. It could be about any other jobs which are not related to to the job location, they can do it from their place itself. If this is given, then people are happy about it, given the condition that the job is done. So, flexibility of work or holidays as such. Now, holidays could be about deciding the holidays for the year. It could be, for example, clubbing up holidays put together in a year, making it 3. If there are 2 holidays, making it 4 in one go. So they have good time to plan their vacations as well. So what a reward system does is really align things up so that people who are self-motivated as well, they are externally motivated as well for doing a good job, maybe to adapt to the working situation as well. Trade unions. Oh, one task that the HR person really is looking forward to, or maybe not looking forward to, are trade unions. When you say to trade unions, lot of time, energy is consumed in addressing this, and if organization have trade unions, it has its own set of pros and cons about it. Now, when we say there is a working class or worker category as per the Workers Act, and if there are standard recognized trade unions in the organization, which are a help to the HR in various ways as well, but also can pose a challenge in other forms as well. So when we talk of trade unions, it is about importance of building relationships with employees representatives. Now, if there are recognized trade unions, it's important that people build good rapport with their union leaders. And when we say union leaders building rapport, it means that when you build a rapport, that means they can influence their peer groups as well, and which is important. And if you see in the last few decades, the concept of trade unions has changed a lot. Where earlier, say 30 years back, 40 years back, trade unions were very, very different from what exists today. And when we say very different, that means a lot of time trade unions used to impact the organization a lot in a negative way than in a positive way. Today's trade unions are different. Obviously, they are organized, yes, but they are not so much mobilized in today's context. So when we say interacting with trade unions, it means that importance of consultation and negotiation, working with trade unions. Now it could be about a grievance of an employee, or it could be a performance issue of an employee which the management wants to talk it out to its employee. Now it has to be channelized through a trade union, or it could be about salary raises through a grievance. It contributes to smooth change management and leadership. Now, in various organizations, there are special people appointed in the HR person to negotiate with trade unions, because recruitment and selection is very different from handling trade unions. Even training as such is very different from trade unions. The trade unions, people need to be a very strong leader in HR, need to take good decisions, not only good decisions, sometimes fast decisions, within the purview of their area of where they can take decisions. The person of an HR needs to be very strong at this end, because he is a kind of person who kind of negotiates and maneuvers through all these acts. Then, through the entire gambit of all the job functions that we go for, we get into now productivity. Now, when we say productivity, we say that when we are moving to productivity, it means that we are talking of efficiency, we are talking of performance, we are talking of delivery, we are talking of in-time delivery, we are talking of results, we are talking of numbers. We are talking of the best. So when we are talking of all this, that means we are measuring productivity. We are measuring the efficiency what each person does and contributes to the organization. And that means measuring performance. And that's where things like KRAs come in. KRAs are key result areas, wherein benchmarks are set in to measure performance. Now, in every job domain, need not necessarily your job could be measured to the precise amount. For example, if you're in sales, your measurement tool is very simple. It's about target to achievement. But not all job functions are that way. For example, if you're working in training and development team, now how do you measure performance? It's kind of skill required. So based on the domains, the benchmarks are laid through which your KRAs are first laid out and measured as well over a period of time. It could be reviews happening, even if you say reviews for that matter. The reviews in yesteryears used to happen every year on year, like April to April or March to March. But with the speed, the change happening, the reviews happen every quarter and sometimes every month as well in terms of the KRAs. So performance is measured. Also, productivity is also about how to value the worker's contribution. Now, when we say value the worker's contribution, what I mean to say is that it is not only about his performance at the workstation, it's also about, suppose the person is having good leadership ability in terms of helping people, in terms of guiding people as well. So that is one area that never get measured or recognized. So it's about the initiative that the HR person needs to take in terms of how he's valuing his workers. Difficulty in measuring some types of outputs, especially in service industry. If it's a customer service, how do you measure? Suppose, for example, somebody is working for a Vodafone customer service, and how do you measure his performance? And because there are no clear-cut measurement tools about it, so that's the challenge. So based on the job set, the KRS need to be decided and really measure its performance. Appraisal. Now, appraisal is a really talked about subject, and especially when you're into March, April period, because that's where people relate not only to money, but also to promotion, also to the job location, also to job specification, also to the types of people you're involved with. So when we talk of appraisal, this is part of legislation of appraisal, and one part definitely is it is meant to be non-judgmental. Now when I say non-judgmental, it means that a lot of time people become very biased. Now biased for or against, it could be because of perception, because a lot of time people, when they meet somebody, they always have this mind frame or mindset saying already always, like this person is always that way. Now you cannot categorize a person always that way, not always, because we all change. If you yourself look into your life, just check for yourself. Were you the same 5 years back? And now when I say were you the same, it means your beliefs, your values, your competencies, your people building skills, your communication, your presentation. Are they the same? Just self-reflect on yourself. They are not. We have evolved. Now when we say evolved, it need not necessarily mean that we are doing better on all fronts. Some skills we have grown, some skills we have kind of diminished about it. We have kind of lost certain skills as well. So People, when they, especially when you talk of appraisal, the HR need to be very clear that the appraisal doesn't come from a window of judgmentalism. So in HR language, we always, when we speak to people around for appraisal, even for line managers, operation managers, we say always, please put on the F5 button always when you meet people. F5 button in a laptop and a computer, yeah, stands for what? Refresh. We need to refresh every time we meet person because everyone is changing, the world is changing as well, people are changing, you and I am changing as well. So when we do an F5 or refresh, we are changing our perception, we are looking person in a new light with absolute non-judgmental awareness. It involves the worker and a nominated appraiser. So when we say appraisal, it's about line manager giving an appraisal or taking an appraisal of the worker. So the measurement tools are clearly laid out. Agreeing to strengths, weaknesses, and way forward to help both employee and organization. So appraisal is not only about salary hikes or performance bonuses or say promotions. Appraisals has got to do also with the way forward about self-development initiative, looking into what are the personal inventories in terms of strength, weakness, areas of opportunity. So in training and development, we take a feedback from a Johari window where people get to know their inherent strengths that they want to develop, which they are good at, certain skills that they are good at, they want to excel, they want to grow, develop. So it's a way forward. Now, way forward also in terms of skills, also in terms of the positions in the organization, also in terms of their role and contribution in the organization, and also about how they can contribute to people down. When I say people down, it also means it is not only about self-development, it also means are you giving, suppose if you are at a certain position in an organization, it becomes a key responsibility of that individual that he bring out leaders and managers from that unit that he is working with. It is also one of his responsibility, and it's also one of the measurement tools of appraisal. How many managers you have given to the organization? How many leaders have you given to the organization? And when I say leaders and managers, it's not about the title. Manager is a title, leader is not. Leader could be anybody. So it's about, have you really empowered your team to the core? Have you really taken up your team not only in terms of numbers to a different level, but also have you shaped them up really well as per the organization's vision and mission of the organization? So this is also what has been looked forward in appraisal as well. Let me tell you, a lot of structured organizations do this about inventory management, personal inventory management, management in terms of how are they shaping up, or what is it that they have not done so far which they need to do this year. What are the things that they need to speak up? A lot of times people don't speak up with people who are doing well. So it's about creating a mentor within the organization as well. This is part of the appraisal where people decide to go and decide a mentorship program, maybe a coaching program, wherein the objective primarily is getting out the better self than what you are today. Is also one of the things that we take care in appraisal as well. So if you see the things like in the primary roles that we have discussed so far, from all these things are, one, we started with recruitment. Recruitment and selection always go hand in glove, but we need to understand the difference right out here. We started with recruitment. selection, employment legislation, discipline, development, system and rewards, training, trade unions, productivity, motivation. So motivation is a fallout which can come through training, it can come through development, uh, it can come through a reward program. So these are the various facets through which an organization really reaches out to different centers and makes it flexible, adaptable, stronger than ever before to manage the company to go to next frontier, next level, or the path to excellence as well. So this is what we have covered so far, is the elements that we have seen through which the HR functions. Great. Now what we are going to do is look into, from these domains knowledge, what we are going to do is, how is it now the HR person get into a new level and get into understanding certain dynamics about things. So in the coming hour or so, we will be discussing or dealing with on strategic human resource management. Sorry. Okay. So when we are speaking of, so first, in the first half, we try to understand various dimensions about it, correct? Be it recruitment, selection, legislation, training and development, appraisal, productivity, motivation. Now, in the next coming hour or so, we will be addressing on strategic human resource management. Now, before we get into, we should understand what is strategy. Strategic means. Strategic comes from the word strategy. Now, tell me, is strategy important in today's context? Very important. First, the HR person, the company needs a vision, correct? And once the organization has a vision, then it needs to have a route map or a road map or an outlay. If I'm to give a metaphor at this point of time, do you know before constructing of any building, what happens first? Everybody knows it. Yes, no. It's a blueprint, isn't it? It's a layout. Now, layout or strategy is very important. How do you go about it? So, strategy applies to all domains of organization. So, also it applies in human resource management as well. So, what we will trying to learn in this session would be discuss why human resource can be a core competency for organization. We'll define HR planning and outline the HR planning process. How do you plan the process as such? Specify 4 important HR benchmarking measures. So, how does the HR benchmark it as well? Identify factors to be considered in forecasting the supply and demand for human resource in the organization. So, we will look into some technical terms as well, like benchmarking. We will have a scorecard approach as well. We will look into how human forecasting needs to be done based on changing global environmental changes as well. We'll also look into things like discuss several ways to manage a surplus of human resource. Identify what a HRIS or human resource information system is and why it is useful when doing HR planning. So let's go one by one. First, human resource as a core competency. Now, when we say core competency, that means if it's a core competency, then strategy is important. So that means we'll need to have a good laid out strategy when we are looking into human resource management. And when we say strategy, the things involved are number one, organizational use of employees to gain or keep a competitive advantage against competitors. So the strategy is in alignment with one, the marketplace, means what's happening in the market. Now you see an Apple, you see a Samsung. I mean, when you talk of change, these are the companies, they have kind of adapted to the situation very fast. You see every week or a fortnight, a new model coming up in the mobile sector, isn't it? Maybe a grand, it could be i5, i6, i7 coming up. So they're adapting to change fast. They are giving the best of the product to the customers, not only a different product which we will look into when we say of product differentiation, but also it's about fast as well. Speed is also the name of the game. It's not only about the big fish eating the small one, but we have also to look into the perspective of the speed as well. The fast also winning the day compared to the slow. So it's not only about the size of the organization, but the speed of the organization as well. So that is the reason you'll find even smaller companies have come up very thick and fast. You take of examples like Flipkart, you take example of Snapdeal, you take an example of even small local examples of Mahesh Tutorials, you take an example of ISBM. Now these are the companies that really flourished as well, based on their domain specific. Also the bigger giants, you take examples of Mahindra and Mahindra, you take of example of ITC. Now ITC is a 100-year-old company. Now a company which was only in cigarette manufacturers, yes or no? But you talk these days, they are into what? They are into everything. They are into oil, they are into chips, they are into atas, they are into the books, the stationery through Classmate, their version of it. So they're into everywhere. So when the stature becomes big, so it's important that you diversify your business into various reaches as well. So when we say of strategic human resource, that means that the organization is penetrating into the far reaches of different domains. The planning needs to be different, isn't it? Core competency. When we say of core, this is about strategy. When we say of core competency, it is the unique capability in the organization that creates high value and differentiates the organization from competition. Now, there are two things to it, students. Number one, what is it that you are making a difference? Number two, what is the core competency that you excel in? Stay by it, grow against it. You take Times of India. What? 150-year-old company, 150-year-old company. There are so many newspaper units that came and disappeared, yes or no. But if you say Times of India, they really not only lasted these last 100, 150 years, but excelled, because they have kind of changed with the environment around. Yet, without losing on their core competency, it's about reaching out to the best news, delivering in the right format, with the right speed, so they are not kind of laid back about it. So the core competency, they're stuck to it and given results. Okay. The possible interventions where HR can look for in core competency and can make it a real high impact kind of zone are, say for example, the possible HR areas of innovations and core competitions are, number one, if you see, are, for example, innovation. Now, the areas we'll look into one by one are: one, innovation; two, outstanding service; three, unusual quality. Now, what is this unusual quality? Unusual quality is what that you don't expect. Now, surprise. Now, earlier the concept was definitely that the concept was always revolving around the fact that you give what the customer wants. Yes or no? Yes, we do give the customer wants. But what Steve Jobs used to say that we are not very much customer focused these days. He used to say that we give the best and the customer takes it, because and that might be relevant from the job domain that Apple is into it, because people are not much aware of the technology in terms of a software revolution or an IT revolution. So it's about unusual quality. It's about giving actually a very fast innovation with superior quality. It could be about special skills. It could be about productivity. It could be definitely innovation. Now, we have already right from the beginning have spoken about change. If any organization needs to sustain change, last change, and excel change, innovation is a driver. Now, if innovation is a driver, human resource needs to intervene innovation through recruitment, through selection, through reward program, through checking attrition. Yes or no? And we will look into these factors one by one. The core competency factor one is organization culture. Now, what is a culture? The culture are the shared values and beliefs of a workforce. Now, let me tell you that any organization has a culture. Now, whenever an employee is rolled in an organization, during the process of induction, the employee is kind of conditioned to it's called a cultural conditioning. It could be through meetings, it could be through their vision, mission statement, it could be through their emblem or logo, it could be their tagline, it could be the service orientation. The culture is transmitted across the board of the organization. Productivity. Now, productivity is the measure of the quantity and quality of work done, considering the cost of resources used. Now, productivity, if you really see earlier yesteryears, it was about mass production, volumes giving business. Might not be totally relevant in today's context and depending on which domains that you work on. But yes, productivity today is not only about volumes, that is, yes, one of the tools, but it's also about how can you optimize resources, given resources. Now, resources is not only the physical resources. Physical resources, apart from physical resources, the resources include things like time, human resource. It could be about value resource. What value are you sharing with your employees, be it internal or external? Now, for example, if integrity is a value proposition that the company goes by, for example, Tatas always have this value proposition of integrity being rolled in their employees. First thing that they always look for is integrity. Now, if that is the culture they are propagating, that means internally that culture is established and so is externally reflected as well. So when we talk of productivity per se, it's not only about the product, what they are producing or the service they are giving, but also the value add as well they are giving it to it as well. It is also the ratio of inputs and outputs that indicates the value added by the organization. The quality products and services. So when we say quality products and services, it means high quality products and services are the results, if you see, of HR enhancement to the organizational performance. Now, now, when we say quality of a product, now if you take the physical measurement as well, suppose if a company is into manufacture of drugs. Now, earlier the measurement tools could be the Indian FDA, Food and Drug Approval norms that the organization need to clear about it. But looking into the context that the organization is working on a global front, the HR thinks, see, Indian FDA is okay, it's good, we are adhering to norms, but that's not good enough. If we are looking from a global perspective, if you're looking 10 years, 20 years down the line, or maybe 50 years down the line, we are looking from a global arena. Now, when we're looking from a global arena, might be an Indian FDA will not suffice. So they might think, okay, ISO certification of plants, US FDA specification, Australian FDA specification, wherein the measurement tools are more stringent, more very straight, more very tight norms as what Indian specifications are. And in these specifications, HR thinks that okay, this is what we want, and lays out a plan. That means the quality again goes up of the product. You might be producing the same stuff, in this example, the same drugs or formulations, but the quality, the end quality in terms of drugs and brands that you are giving it to the companies are at a different level altogether. So it could be increase in shelf life for the formulation of drug. It could be about the packing. It could be about the pack size. It could be about the storage norms. It could be about the plant manufacturing units. It could be about the expiry norms in this example. So when we look into quality products and services in this example, when the specification changes, the measurement tool changes, the brand itself takes a different leap altogether. So earlier the same brand was at a national level representing something, but now it has gone up a leap ahead and representing in a world-class level. It could be in a generic bioequivalent form. It could be a formulated version, but it takes to a different level altogether. And this applies to all domains as well. So HR-based core competencies could be in terms of culture, productivity, quality products and services. Or it could be customer service dimension. It could be in terms of physical facility and equipment. It could be care and concern. It could be timely assistance. It could be dependable, accurate performance, or confidence in employees' knowledge. Now, if you see, all facets of service excellence are soft in approach. When we say soft, they're intangible. That means care and concern. When we say care and concern, can you measure that? Not really, isn't it? So when these dimensions are a real value add. They are priceless to the core. So when HR intervenes in these aspects as well, it really propels and motivates employees to do their best. And let me tell you, doing simple things, small things for say for example, sending a birthday card, personally signed, maybe by the VP or CEO of the organization. If the employee receives, maybe he is 10 line down the hierarchy. But if he receives such a personalized e-greeting or a physical greeting card, he understands and he feels for it, and that feeling is reflected as well. He feels he's part of a larger family. He feels that his contribution is valued and honored. And if this is being done, don't you think that his response to the organization will be of different order altogether? Yes or no? Yes. It will be different in terms of his motivation levels. And if its motivation levels are different, the quality of works they put in is different. His creativity is expanded to new horizons. His commitment level goes up. He's more open to receiving and giving feedback. These things normally come up. So the customer service dimension also opens up different cases as well. In the planning process, let's also find out what are the factors that determine the HR plans. One, strategy of the organization, culture of the organization. These two put together get into the needs of the human resource, qualities and skill levels. One is the needs. Second, what are the resources the organization has? Now, resources could be in taking care of a competitive level, in terms of financial level, in terms of environment level, in terms of natural resource available if the company is into that kind of business, or current situational level. Based on these three things, needs and resources, the HR plans policies are formulated for recruitment, selection, HR development, compensation, performance, staffing adjustments, the fine thing that we have discussed earlier. The linkages of the organizational and HR strategy. Now, linkages could be one, we will look into from a strategy perspective. What if the company is following what strategy? What should be the strategic focus? And what is the HR strategy and the HR activity? One, if it's a cost leadership. Suppose if the company is into pure cost leadership. So, for example, if you are in a toothpaste manufacturer or a toothbrush manufacturer, where you know it's volume business, you know everybody uses it, you know that there are many players, and you feel that apart from quality, cost is going to drive it, depending on the marketplace that you are going in. So strategic focus would be efficiency. Are you optimizing your resources? Stability. Is your team stable? Is your sourcing of products stable? Is your delivery channel stable? Cost control. Seeing to it that your cost is not eating into profits. Now, two things need to be understood very clearly. Selling more is different from making more profit. Now, selling more need not necessarily making more profits. So these dynamics need to be understood as well. The HR strategies in this case would be long-term HR planning horizon, because you know this is a matured market. This is a market to stay along there. Build skills in existing employees so that they can sell the product well, they can manufacture more, they can have a good logistics based on it. Job and employee specialization efficiency as well. And the HR activities for this case would be promote from within. See to it that people are getting promoted from within the organization. They are rewarded, appreciated, recognized. Extensive training at mass level. So this is a mass product. Hire and train for specific capabilities. Now it could be for specific skill sets required which you are looking for optimization. Now suppose the organization is not into cost leadership. They are looking into differentiation. Differentiation is innovation, is creativity comes into picture. So that's where the strategic focus changes. Now it's on growth, it's on innovation, it's on decentralization as well. Why decentralization? Because if you're centralizing creativity, then innovation goes for a toss. You can't really expect different things. So you need to have leverages, you need to give liberty and freedom, certain amount of freedom to that team which is into innovation as well. So the HR strategies would be shorter HR planning horizon, higher the HR capabilities needed, broader, more flexible jobs and employees, and the HR activities in this case would be external staffing, less training, because you know it's a specialized job, you don't need many people for it. Hire and train broad competencies because they are looking for innovation as well. The planning process also involves the process of analyzing and identifying the need for an availability of human resources so the organization can meet these objectives. Now the plan is also obviously so that the needs are identified based on the objective what the organization is looking forward to. It also comes along with planning responsibilities. That means that top HR executive and subordinates actually gather information from other managers as well to use in the development of HR projections for top management, to use in strategic planning and setting organizational goals. When we say of responsibility, that means the HR executives or managers need to gather data as well in the planning process. Now it could be through internal networks or through external agencies as well. Now the typical divisions of HR responsibilities and HR planning would be based on these two, HR unit and managers. Now when we say of HR unit, that means participates in strategic planning process for entire organization, identifies HR strategies, designs HR planning data systems, so where logistics comes into picture, compiles and analyzes that data from managers and staffing ends, for example, the procure data. For example, let's take an example. They want to look into that who needs to go for training, for example, because there's a change in technology. Now, they will take feedback from the line managers or operational managers based on number of years. How much of technical knowledge do they have on that particular technology, and identify from them so that those people will be trained. So this is how the network is built up. Next, implementing HR plans as approved by top management. This is what the HR unit will do. In line with it, the managers would support it by identifying the supply and demand needs for each division or department. This could be from a department and zone wise. Review, discuss HR planning information with HR specialists, integrate HR plans with departmental plans, monitor HR plans, identifying change needed, and review employee succession plans as well. When we see succession plans, wherein any leader also plans up for the next level as well. Suppose he is looking forward. For example, a person is having a team of say around 5 or 6 people. Now that person is also planning, like for example, he's planning his promotion year down the line. Now if he is planning year down the line his promotion, he needs to be very clear that who is going to replace him, because it is the responsibility of that leader that the person who has to replace him has to be given by him, and that's a leadership ability as well. So that's about succession planning that comes in from managers unit. So HR unit and managers unit. But we also seen that HR also happens from a small business end and also in HR planning issues as well. Now, when it comes to smaller business houses and small scale units as we call it, and let me tell you, India's GDP is contributed by 40% of small scale units. 40% is some size, which is some size, although the numbers are huge in the small scale units, but 40% is some chunk size. Now in these units, how does the HR planning process involve? It involves issues like attracting and retaining qualified outsiders. One of the biggest challenges any small scale unit addresses is attrition, because people change often because of pay packages, because of culture, because of suitability, because of long-term vision that the individual aspiration they have. It could be the management succession between generation of owners. Now, a lot of time, if you have seen, especially for a small scale sector. Whenever there is a change of leadership and when it passes from one generation to the other generation, especially if in a proprietor business, especially when it moves from one generation to the other generation, a lot of changes you'll find that at that point of time happening when people leaving jobs, people demotivated, or the reverse also, people motivated. Maybe youth are promoted more often. Maybe experience is not taken care of, or experience is not counted or counted. So a lot of time when there is a change of leadership or guard from one generation to the other, a lot of changes happen in this way as well. So the HR planning process is important in this way as well. Evolution of HR activities as business grows, because not every small scale unit will remain a small scale unit. Yes or no? It will grow. So as per their growth, the HR also plans its changes through the journey as well. Family relation and HR policies. So what kind of, because normally in a very small scale kind of unit, it's more family oriented. It's more of a business culture house. So based on that, when the HR person is planning, they need to take this into perspective as well. The process involved are, first always remember students, the first you should always know as an HR person what are the organizational objective and strategies. What is the vision and mission of the organization? Number one. Then two things that they can do: scan external things, internal things. Externally, you look for environment, you look for resource of labor, raw material, infrastructure, changes that are happening. Internally, if you can see this graph or presentation, you will see changes for internal inventory of people, of positions, of job titles. Based on that, forecasting to be done. The forecasting is done on organizational needs for people and survey of people available. Based on that, the plan is formulated. The process involves HR strategy. That means it is used to anticipate and manage the supply of and demand of human resources. It provides overall direction for the way in which HR activities will be developed and managed as well. The overall strategic plan followed up by the HRM plan, HR strategic plan, and followed by what needs to be done by the plan. So one, the overall organizational strategic perspective, then the HR strategic perspective, and the actions needed. Now we look into the benefits of HR planning. One, a definite clear-cut distinct benefit, better view of HR dimensions of business decisions. You get to know, you are able to make better business decisions in terms of all angles. It lowers HR cost through better HR management. Because if you are well prepared, they say half prepared is prepared, getting prepared is half the job done, isn't it? So when we say half the job done, it means not only good management, it also means good efficiency, it also means reduction of cost as well, it also means optimization as well. More timely recruitment for anticipating HR needs as well. More inclusion of protected groups through planned increases in workforce diversity as well is seen. This could be roped in as well. Better development of managerial talent. So if you have a planning in place, then things like succession planning could be done. Things like appraisal could be structured, more formulated, more tabular, more tangible as well, where judgmental biased feedback are kept out of the loop. Now we'll go and understand one by one. How do you scan the external environment? One. And when we think of environmental scanning, it means it is the process of studying the environment of the organization to pinpoint opportunities and threats. So it would be actually a good SWOT. SWOT standing for strength, weakness, opportunity and threat. Environmental changes impacting HR are: number one, government regulations, economic conditions, geographic and competitive concerns. Let me tell you, uh, we a lot of time when company want to do a strategic layout in terms of HR policies, they align their decision making in terms of budget, in terms of railway budget, in terms of census data generation if it is nearby, or 5 yearly as well, because these data are very critical and crucial because they form the outlay for getting it ahead as well. It also includes workforce composition as well, because taxes changes, fuel prices changes, the prices of fruits, vegetables changes as well. So based on this, the compensation is also laid out as well. Also, employees is of part-time workers. Now, if you see this table, it's a very good table sourced from Part-Time Employment Board Bureau, wherein on the x-axis it is plotted percentage of employers hiring, and the y-axis is types of part-time employees. Now, if you really plot these two graphs, you'll find that the more contribution is from 85% from regular and voluntary, and the involuntary is less. So dependency, if you see, has to be from more regular workers who have been contributing, could be on the roll as well. And if you see, there are other people who contribute as well. It could be volunteer people who are retired as well are taken up in the organization from a consultancy role as well, because their experience is the key portfolio. So they are roped in for their experience. The internal assessment or internal scanning that's done are auditing jobs and skills. Like for example, the jobs that are available today, are their numbers sufficient? Number one, are they relevant based on job locations? Could be decreased, could be increased. The skill set that are demanded 2 years back, should they be upscaled? Should they be modulated? Should they be refined? Should they be fine-tuned? Is what we do internal scanning. What job exists now? How many individuals are performing each job? Are they measurable? How essential is each job? What is their contribution to the overall process is also assigned, and that's what we call as job analysis. What jobs would be needed to implement future organization strategies? So it's not only about current jobs as well, but what are the forthcoming jobs that we call as forecasting of jobs as well? What are the characteristics of the anticipated job? So need not necessarily the jobs that would be coming up are the same. The nature would be different. The structure would be different. So what are the forecasting tools? So the organizational capability inventory is taken in terms of databases, HRIS databases, that is information system databases, where sources of information about employees' knowledge, skills and abilities are taken, KSAs or ask as they call it. Components of the organizational capability inventory is also taken place in terms of workforce and individual demographics as well. Individual employees' career progression as well tracked based on how many years of experience they have got, how much promotion the person has taken, or how much they have been taking time to take each promotion as well. Individual performance data is also taken as well through appraisal format as well. So based on this data of external scanning of environment and internal, the forecasting of HR job and demand. Now it could be forecasting in terms of use of information from past to present to identify expected future conditions. The forecasting method could be judgmental, based on experience, based on expertise, or it maybe estimates asking manager's opinion, top down or bottom up. It could be through various hierarchy tools if we're going from top to down or up to down, or rule of thumb, whatever applies more. It could be Pareto's approach, could be 20% making an effective contribution of 80%, or using general guidelines, or could be a Delphi method wherein asking group of experts as well is taken up. It could be nominalization as well. Nominal groups wherein reaching out to a group consensus in open discussion where the core group is taken and asked to brainstorm on the subject, discuss out the subject, and then evolve to a decision about forecasting as well. Now, forecasting methods could be mathematical, like statistical regression analysis. It could be simulation models. It could be productivity ratios, unit produced per employee. It could be staffing ratios. Staffing ratios are how many staff per job, estimates of indirect and direct labor. It could be forecasting based on period. So it could be short term, or it could be intermediate or medium term up to 5 years, or it could be long term, anything above 5 years. So based on these forecasting methods, two methods, mathematical method, it could be, we have discussed the regression method, simulation, productivity method, or it could be judgmental methods as well. Now, forecasting, if you see, of HR demand and supply, it is organizational wide estimate of total demand. So it's not only about a domain, it's about entire organization. If it's spread across the globe, it is across the globe demands as far as human resources is concerned. It is unit-wise breakage as well of specific skill sets. It's not only about the spreadsheet across the globe, but the unit-wide breakage in terms of people, in terms of skills required as well. Develop decision rules for position to be filled internally and externally. Like you are thinking that, okay, this many positions are going to be there for, say for example, in coming year, an organization sees or projects that 2,000 vacancies would be there across the board. 2,000 based on the fact that 1,200 is the attrition and 800 are the new positions. Now, if 2,000 is the position that looking forward, that means that the things that could be taken up inside are factors of mathematical calculation, rule of thumb. It could be a nominal group. They could develop additional decision rules for position impacted by the chain effects of internal proportions and transfer. So the HR needs to also calculate that it's not only about the new positions, but also people who are getting promoted, people who are getting transferred, people who are getting retired, people who are losing their job because of an accident, a death. So these also need to be taken into account of in forecasting. It also needs to take into whether they are going to fill it externally or internally, part-time, full-time. So these are things they also need to take care of. Now when we talk of external HR supply, now they need to take care of factors affecting external supply. It could be cost, it could be their compensation, it could be job locations where proper skill sets do not get it. It could be net migration from an area as well. It could be individuals entering and leaving the workforce as well, or individuals graduating from schools and colleges. How many, say for example, engineers or doctors are getting graduated, or how many commerce graduates are graduating every year? How many MBAs are coming up every year? So based on that also forecasting is done. Or changing workforce composition and patterns as well. It could be economic forecast as well. Suppose if there is an economic depression, or if there is an economic outburst, that also matters in forecasting as well. It could be technological developments and shifts as well. It could be actions of competitive employees as well. So the forecasting is also done based on what the competitor is doing as well. Which part of growth cycle you as an organization are, or which part of the growth cycle as a product pipeline you are in as well, also influences this forecasting as well. Government regulations and pressures and practices, definitely not to be overlooked at any point of time. And other natural factors or calamities as well need to be considered in as we move along. So when you say of forecasting internal HR supply, now we saw first the external. The internal supply are effects of promotion, the lateral moves and terminations. It could be succession analysis. It could be the replacement charts. It could be about transition matrix, wherein You look into from a line manager to a supervisor to a manager. So what is the transition happening? Because at every level, the attrition will not be same. It has been found, especially through Markov matrix, that the maximum attrition happens at the lowest hierarchy, and then it kind of reduces as we move up the hierarchy. So if the transition is happening layer to layer, this also need to be accounted for when we are forecasting as well. Plus, we need to look into current staffing level as well. Current staffing level means the source of inflow. If you see on the left hand side of the slide, the sources of inflow are external hires, internal transfers, promotions, recalls. Or source of outflow could be promotions, turnovers, terminations, demotions, retirement, death, layoff. So this is the current staffing. Now estimated could be done based on current staffing level minus projected outflow this year plus projected inflow this year becomes the unit's internal supply of this time next year. Get this equation once again. Current staffing level minus projected outflow this year plus projected inflow this year becomes the unit's internal supply of this time next year. So this is how we forecast the people around based on skills and competencies and demographics. Now, how do you manage surplus or shortages? Now, workforce reduction and the WARN Act is one of the guiding forces in this. Now, wherein it identifies employers' requirement for layoffs advance notice. Like for example, there's a rule of Employment Act that if you want to leave a job, you need to give a notice period. Now, it depends. Normally, 60 days is the period. There's a 60-day notice to employees and local community before a layoff or facility closing involve more than 50 people. So, if the unit is anything above 50 employees or more, then the transition need to be planned as well. It's called as employee transition or career transition. But a lot of companies do it when they are laying off people. It does not cover for seasonal worker or part-time workers. If they are rolled in, they are part of the role of the company, that's where career transition happens. It imposes fines for not allowing notification procedure. Suppose a person is living without any notification, then fine is imposed as well because that's a cost to the company as well. Has a hardship clauses as well for unanticipated closure or lack of business continuation capabilities. So few hardship clauses are also put in as well. Now, when you are looking for workforce realignment, we commonly call it downsizing, right sizing, reduction, whatever you call it. It means reducing the number of employees in the organization. The causes might be economic. Now, the demand has gone down, loss of market to competitors, or the market itself has shrunk. It could be structural with the technological change, it could be an organizational merger, it could be an acquisition, has needed the cost to right sizing. So if that is the case, the realignment has to be looking for a positive consequence. That means it has to be taken it ahead so that it increase competitiveness, increase productivity. The negative consequence normally in right sizing becomes cannibalization of HR resources. It does a loss of specialized skills and experience. Normally, if you are laying off people, definitely there's a loss of people around and workforce around as well. There's a loss of growth and innovation skills. Managing supervisors becomes very important. That means providing explanation for actions and the future. It involves survivor in transition and regrouping activities as well. So when you're looking at downsizing approaches, the important thing that need to be kept in mind is attrition and hiring freezes. That means it freezes attrition at one point of time, wherein not replacing or departing employees and not hiring new employees. That's for sure whenever you're downsizing. Early retirement buyouts offering incentives for people who want to laid off to senior employees